us tonight on In Focus, I am Thabo Mdluli. ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa says the outcome of the 2021 local government elections reflect the will of South Africans. He was addressing a gathering of supporters at an event meant to thank those who supported the party by voting at the polls. The ANC lost its national majority, with its support plummeting by nearly 8% compared to the 2016 municipal elections.
This process of elections gives meaning, comrades, to the declaration in the Freedom Charter that no government can justly claim authority unless it is based on the will of the people. And that's exactly what happened during the local government elections. The will of the people was expressed.
Ramaphosa acknowledged that his party performed at its worst since the dawn of democracy.
With limited resources and with preparations hampered by COVID-19 restrictions, ANC volunteers carried out an intensive campaign across the length and the breadth of our country. As the ANC, this was probably the most difficult election campaign that we have ever undertaken. And it is, yes, in the end, the worst electoral outcome for the ANC in 27 years of democracy. But it was a difficult campaign.
Now, Ramaphosa has told ANC supporters not to feel defeated when it comes to coalition talks. He says the party will not be going into coalitions at any cost, slamming comments from other parties that vowed not to work with them. He added that if coalition talks fail, they will look at the courts to intervene.
Another immediate task that we are going to have, let me conclude on this one. Obviously, there is a time frame for these negotiations to take place. And if those negotiations fail, the legislation kicks in. It kicks in, and let me say, if there is a failure, comrades, that's why I'm saying don't ever feel helpless. Or we are helpless, or we are lying on our backs. If those negotiations fail and no credible government and local government is set up, then the law kicks in, and there's a time frame that's put in place, and then there might have to be another election to actually elect our people.
Well, what is the way forward then for the party as it navigates coalition and prepares itself for 2024's general election? Here to help me unpack this, I'm joined by political analyst Timka, Professor Sethulego Matebisi, and Lesiba Tefo. Gentlemen, good evening, and thank you very much for your time tonight here on In Focus. I mean, if indeed we agree that this is the voter punishing the ANC, you have to ask the question, does this punishment carry on into a decline in the national, provincial, and local government elections? The president there of the party saying, we are not helpless, right? So we're not going to take this lying down. We've got a way of fighting back. Well, he says the courts will intervene. We'll unpack a little bit more about what that actually says. But does this punishment carry on, and what's the likelihood of the ANC ever regaining an overwhelming majority, particularly in the metros? Prof. Matebisi?
Hi, good evening, Thabo, and good evening to my fellow panelists, South Africans. Well, if you look at any election outcome, you will see that the African National Congress is one of those parties that definitely sheds electoral support. And I think it's a trend that will continue. But the ball is definitely in the hands of the African National Congress. To what extent will they try to arrest this decline? And I've heard some public pronouncement that they've learned a lesson. And the question is, you know, is it not too late? We are 2 years from turning 30 years in our democracy, and you still have, a ruling party saying they are learning lessons. Well, it's fine. Obviously, with each election presents new challenges, and definitely political parties have to take stock of how they performed. But for the African National Congress, it is a question of how are they going to deal with the challenges. And it's not challenges from opposition parties, not challenges from South African citizens. It is challenges from within itself. How are they going to deal with their internal problems, which I strongly believe that has a huge impact on how the African National Congress have been governing this country. But for me, in short, it is a trend that will continue, but there is a possibility that they can arrest it. But it seems as if the South African voters are now speaking a different language.
It's 2021 right now, Lesiba Tefo, and it is a gloomy picture that is emerging from these local government elections of 2021. 3 years from now, we are looking at the next national elections. What are the prospects of the ANC losing power even there?
It could lose power, but perhaps it ought not to have found itself where it is today. Indeed, they wouldn't be where they are had they listened that there is what is called sins of incumbency. And given that they were the last to be, we are the last to be liberated, we ought to have learned from those who went before us. But there is this tendency of thinking that South Africans are the exceptions to the rule. And personally, I'm happy for the ANC because they are victims of incumbency. This is an opportunity that presents itself, that they had hoped for without hoping for it, to cleanse themselves and to rid themselves of the leeches, careerists, charlatans who pretend to be speaking and purporting to be acting on behalf of. So for me, it's a golden opportunity for them. Two, it's also a golden opportunity for the society in itself, because it says you can also rid yourself, right? Liberate yourself from the liberators. And I think the vote of last week is telling them in no unclear terms. In a sense, I go along with them, the voters, that we have had enough of majoritarian tyranny with its twin sister political arrogance, or the arrogance of power. There are good men and women in the ANC. Let them regroup. Let them lose power so that the right people remain and rebuild the organization that yesterday, especially in the first 15 years of our democracy, under Mbeki and Mandela, did a good job. But I think it is good for the country that they lost power. It is good for the ANC itself that it finds itself where it is. Yeah. It's a golden opportunity for them to make an introspection and cleanse themselves. They are trying to eat humble pie, but you can't lie to the people all the time. At one stage, they will see through, and they have seen through. All the apologies the president has been trying to make, the premiers and everybody, it was far too late.
Losing ground in the major metros, is the ANC still in control? I mean, what is the sense that you're getting from even the thank you speech that was delivered by President Cyril Ramaphosa today? Prof. Tefo? I'm saying losing ground in the major metros, which means, of course, they are losing great support of the middle class in particular. Is the ANC still in control?
And should they be where they are? Simply because, you know, the arrogance of power. Some of us did indicate to them, by the way, in 2016, that the liberation movement starts first by losing power in the metropoles, where the literate is, the educated, the learned, because they begin to question and interrogate the policies, and they try to sense whether you are listening or not listening. Are you responding or not responding? Now where are they? They are now becoming a rural party. And unless otherwise, history tells me, yeah, they cannot reverse this until and unless they lose power and get reborn. They've lost the metros, and I suspect the prognosis is not good come 2024. And I think the people of South Africa deserve better. They voted with their feet, but how far they will go, the people of South Africa, I'm also not sure, because the ANC can still come back in a big way.
So
can't have a small country.
You believe?
Finish this thought.
Okay, do finish the thought.
Yes, we are a small country with 60 million people, but yet we have 505 political parties and about 1,000 independents. Something is not right, simply because we have made politics more profitable than industry.
Yeah. You think there is a likelihood of the ANC to once again build enough support? You're saying it's got a capacity to make a major comeback?
Yes, I say so because I know there are good men and women out there who were repelled by the stench of corruption in their organization, and they would love to come back. And I think President Ramaphosa is also saying that much, that there are people out there who might come back and help restore this. But he can't go as far as I'm saying what I'm saying now, because he's wearing the colors of his party. I wear no color of any party. But he knows that there are good men and women who can come together and help rebuild this organization once they get rid of the leeches, the charlatans, the traitors who have betrayed the people, when by not even listening to Tambo when he said, one day you will realize once you are in government, and I might be dead then, but you'll realize it's far easy to fight a liberation war than to govern.
Quick break. In a moment, we'll come back. What's your feeling on the likelihood of the ANC once again regaining enough support to win a majority in the metros? Prof. Matebisi will get you to weigh in on that as well. But to participate in the conversation tonight, send us your views. So WhatsApp message is 072-110-5584, or you can tweet us at Newzroom405. In Focus continues next.
What is most crucial is the link that our people form between the state of the ANC and our performance in government at all levels. When they look at us, they say, this is what is happening in their organization ipso facto. It speaks for itself that even in government, they will not perform well. And in many cases, yes, our factionalism, our internal fight has an impact on our governance capability, because we fight like there's no tomorrow, as I said, and we forget that what we are there to do is to serve the people of South Africa as a whole. That is what the ANC was formed for.
In conversation tonight, Professor Sethulego Matebisi as well as Professor Lesiba Tefo with us tonight. Fortunately, Ongama having challenges there coming on. But Professor Matebisi, it's precisely that performance in government that is leading to the country's big parties wanting to leave the ANC out in the cold in these coalition talks. How does that approach to coalitions actually impact what will happen next in those municipalities?
No, well, look, I've also heard the Deputy Secretary General of the African National Congress stating that they will negotiate from a position of power. But I don't think it's necessarily about the performance of the African National Congress in the elections that is a huge factor from the opposition parties. We're talking about a party which seems accepts the fact that 26 billion of unaccounted expenditure in local government municipalities is normal. That, for me, it's a huge, huge problem. There should have been consequences. And the problem that we also have, we've got professionals. We can blame the African National Congress. Professionals with tertiary qualifications who are also party to that. And I would like to see a stage where we will start to take action against chief financial officers, municipal managers, and even the mayors, because they need to account for every rand. And we're not talking about billions. But for the African National Congress, the problem is most parties will go into coalition agreements without the mandate from the people who have voted from them. And I think most parties have learned a lesson. The informal agreements of 2016 will definitely not, find its way during the current negotiations, because I think most parties and even the civil society organizations and the independent candidates would have learned a lesson that the South African electorate will punish them come the next elections. And that's why I think most parties are actually closing the door on the African National Congress, because you don't want to associate yourself with an organization which is partly part of the problem of all the dysfunctional municipalities and all the other challenges that we face in South Africa today.
So take a metro like the city of Johannesburg. Is there a party there that looks at the ANC and says, well, this party is attractive enough for us to be able to be in coalition with them? And if not, where does that put the coalition talks? I mean, what will happen when the negotiations they fail and no government is set up?
No, we all know what's going to happen. Then the Municipal Structures Act will kick in, and I think for me an ideal situation is if you've got a party which have a larger proportion negotiating with one or two other parties. But the problem will comes in when smaller parties try to shun a party like the African National Congress, and they forming a coalition, almost like a bloc against the African National Congress. And if one of them just pulls out during voting, that will create a lot of problems. And I think this will once again create a vicious cycle of internal struggles within these coalition blocks within our municipalities. Definitely, if a speaker is not elected, or the election does not take place within the next 14 days, we know what's going to happen. That perhaps then there will be intervention from the province and even at national level in these different municipalities where there are challenges. And once again, we would not like to see such a situation, because yet once again, I think the African National Congress will be blamed for using a stronger hand to try and wrest their power from municipalities. And we just hope that the interest of the residents and the citizens of South Africa will get precedence, when these discussions are taking place.
We can only hope so. I mean, Professor Tefo, I see you laughing there. Will the parties display enough mature politics here which works to serve the people and not matters of access to power?
No, I just enjoy listening to Professor Matebisi, because he just didn't go far enough to say, by the way, we are where we are because of cadre deployment. But it's just a footnote that I put to what he has said. But look, Thabo, there is nothing magical about being South African. We are no exceptions under the sun. And that we are underlings, it is because of our own fault, not because of anything from above. Why is it that in Britain, coalition worked well under Cameron and them? That how many even of the executives in Ramaphosa's cabinet know that Germany is being run by a coalition? How many aspiring politicians do they know that much? Because people don't read. And once you read and understand what the coalition is, you'll appreciate that it's about the people, not about the self, not about my party. And that's why Angela Merkel is so famous, is so popular. And even when there is no formal government, but the systems work very well, because civil servants know They are there to serve the people, not themselves. They are imbued with the spirit of servant leadership. Coalitions can work, and they will work, and they nearly work in South Africa, but they collapsed because of greed. The good example for me always I cite is Nelson Mandela Bay under Athol Frolik. That fellow did a wonderful job. Incidentally, I repeat, wherever the DA is given a chance to govern, it governs well. Even the research of the African National Congress will attest to that. Even state institutions charged with the responsibility of oversight will tell you wherever they govern well. Why can't the DA and the ANC work together in the interest of the people and form coalition government?
Yeah, but
the
DA has already declared that they don't want to be in coalition with the ANC, and will that then limit the options of good governance?
Yes. If it is about the other and not the self, I can understand the DA and others who say the ANC is a polecat. Basically, if we go into bed with them, we'll be redeeming them, right? Rather than redeem them, let's at least unleash the final, right? At least punches to ensure that they don't resurrect come 2024. But what I'm getting at is, if you look closely at the results of all the metros, is the ANC and the DA and the DA the ANC. And if it was about the principle, they would agree and even agree to disagree, but say we can work together in the interest of the people in certain. The ANC has got the numbers and the good experience under Mandela and Mbeki. The DA has consistent good governance experience and pedigree. Surely let's talk about the people of South Africa. Let's talk about the electorate and forget about the colors of our T-shirts.
Prof. Matebisi, will the ANC be able to stick to its guns in a coalition with, for example, the EFF, or they will just then need to accept their new role as opposition parties in the metros that they lost?
Yeah, well, it's very difficult to comment on that one. But look, fact of the matter is, even where the ANC does not have significant numbers, I can assume the ANC is a big role player in our politics in South Africa, and they would want to be seen to be playing that leading role, and that's why I don't think the ANC will just necessarily sit back even where they are in coalition with the EFF. But remember, behind the scenes, it will be a give and take situation, and I hear what my fellow panelist, Prof. Tefo, is stating. But these are politicians, and you also have to look at the political implications. And we may preach that at the end of the day, it's all about service delivery, it's all about good governance. But we have seen what happened in 2016. It seems as if these issues were relegated to the back, and what got discussed was all about positions and all that. But this time around, for a party like the African National Congress, they will definitely want to at least, it's going to be very difficult also, and I agree, for the Democratic Alliance and the ANC to form any coalitions, but that would have been an ideal situation, irrespective of the consequences of being punished by the electorate. But that can only happen when political parties also learn, even way before an election, that they may find and already inform the electorate that there is a possibility that we will work with party X, Y, Z based on these principles. And we've seen that. But for a party like the EFF already, we have seen they've got several demands. And their demands, we all know, not many parties will be able to meet those demands. And already there we've got a problem. And I foresee a situation where the EFF will support certain, discussions or that is going to take place in municipalities. But fact of the matter is, it will also become very disruptive. But I remain very optimistic that coalition government agreements and politics in South Africa, even at our local government level, can definitely work as long as the political parties can just put the interest of the electorate first.
Professor Sethulego Matebisi, I appreciate your time. Professor Lesiba, Tefo, as always, much appreciated. And thanks for coming on tonight here on In Focus. And so we leave that conversation. When we